So apparently Ken Rockwell says that the Olympus 35 SP camera is better than a Leica. Surely not. After my patron Thomas kindly lent me his Olympus camera, I set to work to see whether it was true. Can the Olympus beat my favourite Leica M3? Coming up, I have 2 models for you and 2 rolls of film. Stay with me until the end and I'll explain how I process the film, and I'll give you a full verdict of whether or not I think the Olympus does in fact beat the Leica M3. Hey guys, Matt here from MrLeica.com. So before we get into the pictures, I just want to say a huge thanks to my amazing patrons. If you're new here, Patreon is my teaching platform. It's like a separate website where I share additional content. It's a lot of model photography. That's what I teach most of the time. And for this trip, I was teaching Leica workshops for 3 days in the Netherlands, all model photography with mostly Leica cameras. Feel free to follow me on Instagram to see some of the resulting photos. Okay, let's get into the pictures. So after a short flight from London into Amsterdam, Thomas kindly picked me up and we headed to the Hague, and in particular to the pier in the Hague, as this was going to be our location for the whole day and for both model photo shoots. We had 1 model in the morning, 1 model in the afternoon, and I always find piers great places for photo shoots. This was day 3 of the trip, and so we had an early-ish start to get there to make sure we did both photo shoots before I left for my flight home. As you can see, I've got my trusty Wotan craft bags, both the 18-litre rucksack and also the smaller pilot bags as well. In addition to the Leica camera and the Olympus camera, I'm also going to be shooting with the digital Leica SL camera and also my Hasselblad. Okay, on to the testing. So for both cameras, I loaded them up with expired Ilford Delta 400 film. It's just film I had in the fridge. I didn't actually know I was going to be doing this test until the morning of the photo shoots. I loaded up the M3 first, and the lens you can see on the M3 is a Leica Summarit 50-1.5, and then it's time to load up the Olympus. Now tell me in the comments, but I think I loaded it the wrong way around in terms of I inserted the film leader first and then dragged the film across. I think I would have been better to load the cartridge first and then drag the leader second. Comment below, I think I did it wrong, but I got there eventually. As with all 35mm film cameras, I put some tension on the film, and that then gives me 38 or 39 shots per roll. Now, if you're not aware of the Olympus 35 SP, this is a fixed lens rangefinder camera with a 42mm f1.7 lens and a close focus distance of 0.85 meters. This camera was released in 1969, so on my M3 I started off with a Leica Summarit lens released in 1954. I then moved on to the Light Lens Lab clone of the 1958 Summicron 50 f2 lens. As mentioned, for digital I'll be using my trusty Leica SL camera. That's my digital currency. I pay the models in digital photos, and also had the Hasselblad with me too with the 120mm macro lens. Our first model of the day was Shannon, who I found on Instagram, how I find most of my models. She's not actually a model, but she looked super cool, so I was very happy for her to reply to me and say yes, she was up for pictures. As you can see, we had quite overcast yet brightish condition first thing in the morning, and we were shooting into the light from the far end of the pier. Straight past the first frame.
It even sounds vintage.
Yeah. It was actually pretty quiet first thing in the morning, which was really nice, and it made it much easier for taking pictures and not having people photo bombing in the background. I started off with the SL and the Hasselblad, and then I used a Hasselblad as a prop for some of the other pictures. You can see me interchanging between the SL, the M3 and the Olympus 35 SP, and here are the first sample photos, both shot around f4. And as you can see, if you zoom in, the Leica does give you more detail, but the Olympus isn't terrible. Apologies in advance for the low quality film photos in this video. It was expired film and expired chemistry, so they're not as good as they maybe could be. Here you can see the M3, the Olympus and the Hasselblad to show all 3 cameras. And here again, Leica versus Hasselblad. As mentioned, if you're in the Olympus camera, let us know in the comments below. Do you like it? What do you think? Do you agree to my comments in this video? I actually own the Olympus 35 RC, but I've never used the SP. Here are more sample photos, Olympus versus M3. Again, sorry for the grain, but you can see the Leica's got more detail in the photo. Again, all 3 cameras with the medium format camera being the benchmark. Okay, here you can see the reflector setup. So I had the Wotan craft bag on the stand, and that stopped the reflector blowing away in the wind. Luckily, it wasn't too windy, so it worked pretty well for what we needed it for. Seeing the behind the scenes video footage in hindsight would have been quite nice to perhaps shoot colour film, seeing the colour of the sky and the wall around the model's face. Here I use the Olympus as a prop again, but yeah, Shannon made a great model, so it made for very easy pictures. These are some of my favourite photos from this particular photo session. I like the fashion vibe, but when you zoom in, again, the Leica is definitely sharper than the Olympus. All three cameras, Hasselblad being the best, Leica second, Olympus third. Okay, we move to a slightly different place on the pier for a slightly different setup. Again, I'm shooting all cameras, and a huge thanks to Thomas for doing the behind the scenes video footage for you guys. For those of you with a very keen eye, I'm using the Light Lens Lab new hood on the vintage Leica Summarit because it does actually fit. And I shot almost all photos with both the Olympus and the Leica M3 between f2.8 and f4 because I know that the Summarit lens, being a vintage lens, is not particularly sharp on film below f4. If you enjoy using Hasselblad cameras, again, let us know in the comments. Nearly all the photos shared in this video are just unedited film scans, so apologies if they look a bit more rough and ready than some of my other photos. I found the Olympus 35 SP very easy to focus, or in terms of very fast to focus, and it's got a big bright viewfinder, which again makes it very easy to use. Here's some more side-by-side photos, and on this occasion, from the crop, you can see that the performance is pretty similar from both cameras. You can see me direct to the models. I often use hand signals. I'm used to working with models often that don't have English as their first language, so I kind of got used to working with body language and hand signals. Again, if you want to see more on my model photography stuff, click on the Patreon link below. For those of you that love cameras with light meters, it's worth mentioning that the Olympus camera does have a built-in light meter, a spot meter, but as I'm using the digital Leica SL camera, I just copy the settings from digital to film and do it that way. Here are more photos, and in this case, the Leica wins. I think the Olympus rangefinder is faster to focus, but not as accurate. But again, let me know in the comments what you think. As we continue with our shoot, the sun started to break through the clouds. You can see the shadow from Shannon on the wood. And so again, I was using the reflector now at more of a distance to put a bit of sparkle in the eyes and also a slight bit of fill without completely blinding the model. Here's me now with the reflector close to the model. That gives me better lighting. The closer you can get the reflector to the model's face, the more directional light that you can have, and so hopefully the more flattering the portrait. Sadly, as I was shooting into light with vintage lenses, the contrast is maybe flatter than you would get from a digital camera. I think the model and Thomas were laughing at me juggling so many different cameras. I'm used to probably 2 or 3 different cameras on one particular shoot, but 4 was maybe more than I'm normally used to. Here you can see the view of the shoot through the Hasselblad using the waist level viewfinder. As I say, I prefer to use the prism finder, but I had to pack light, so I had to take the waist level finder on this trip. If you love fixed lens rangefinder cameras, definitely check out the Olympus 35 SP. It is fun to use. Here are more sample photos, and if we zoom in this case I think the Leica is slightly sharper, but the Olympus isn't terrible. All 3 cameras, Hasselblad obviously wins. Okay, at this point of the shoot I thought it was time to maybe try the Elcan lens on the M3 instead of the 50mm Summarit. So I switched from the vintage Leica lens, which is pretty soft at wide apertures, to the modern Light Lens Lab replica of the Summicron 50 f2 Elcan. This lens is fantastic and it's one of my most used lenses. Here you can see the Summarit as a comparison. So from now on the photos should get sharper on the M3, and I'm now using the Summarit on digital. Now this is what happens when you forget to put a bag on your reflector stand. Sorry, Shannon. If you never tried model photography, I highly recommend it. We have such good fun on these shoots. And again, thanks to Thomas for both inviting me for the workshop and also driving us around and doing the behind the scenes footage. In this photos are similar from both cameras, but I was shooting wide open because it was pretty dark inside the pier. For the final photo of shoot 1, Thomas took us under the pier and we got these photos. After that, it was time to let Shannon go home and have some rest, and it's time for us to grab a bite to eat before model number 2 arrived. I think we shot for 3 hours with the first model, and then we're ready to go again for around about 3 hours again with the second model. And with that, shoot 2. So for shoot 2, we met with a Ukrainian model and professional dancer, Marina. Marina didn't speak much English, but as I understand it, she was a part of an all-Ukrainian dance school now based in the Netherlands, where they train pretty much all days of the week. But because of her lack of English, I did my usual hand signals and body language, and that got us through the shoot, no issues whatsoever. Here's the first sample photos using both cameras, this time now with the Elcan on the M3. If you zoom in, look at the difference. This is why I love the Elcan. It's amazing lens. Highly recommend it. I can put a link below if you want money off that lens. Here are some more photos shot with the Hasselblad, and again, really good. I was really happy with the results. Both sharpness, shallow depth of field, really good. Okay, next location. Marina had actually only brought one outfit, I think lost in translation, so we had to make do with the one set of clothes that she had. I posed her in this doorway to get light from behind to give her a hair light and then soft light as fill on her face. Here is a sample photo shot with the Elcan, and yeah, it's amazing how much kind of fun you can have on these shoots even when you don't speak the same language. Here's me taking the same photo with the Olympus, but with film sometimes you just don't know quite what happens. It wasn't quite as I expected. Now you can see me directing the model in terms of the pose in my head, so I can do another shot trying to use the same clothes. I tend to just make it up as I go along and see how the model fits the situation or the location that we're working in. I shot loads to get full height photos, and here's a digital photo shot with the Summarit on the Leica SL. Okay, by this point I'd finished my film on the M3, and so I was continuing with the Hasselblad and the Olympus. Here's me using the same doorway so I can control the light. This is all available light only. You can see the sparkle in the eyes from me asking her to look out from the inside of the stairwell. Here's the view from inside the Hasselblad. And then these photos are all shot on the Hasselblad. I did a series of photos with the Hasselblad because I wanted to make sure I'd finished the film before I headed back to the UK. As you can see from the background, there are now more people on the pier, but we tried to work around them to the most part, and it's still obviously much quieter than it would be in summer months. These photos are shot with the Olympus 35 SP. They're not perfect, but I quite like the retro look from, I guess, quite how imperfect they are. If you don't like shooting film but want to get the film look, I highly recommend the Summarit 50 1.5 to use on digital. Shoot it wide open or close to wide open and you get a nice filmic look. Okay, by this point I felt I was missing out with my M3, so I loaded up an additional roll of film. This is Ilford Pan 400. Again, here are photos using both cameras, Olympus on the left, M3 on the right. Again with the Elcan shot probably around f2.8 to f4, and look at the difference, the Elcan is way sharper. Here's me trying a few more pose ideas. I just think of them in my head and then sometimes I'll pose and then get her to copy me. It's called mirror posing. That way you don't need to speak the same language. These photos are nice, but again, shooting into the light, the images look quite flat because of the lack of contrast. Again, here's more sample photos, Delta 400 in the Olympus, Pan 400 in the M3. M3 is sharper. And with that was the end of our second photo shoot. A huge thanks to Marina, amazing sport and an amazing fashion model. She's just got a really good fashion look. Okay, as promised, before we get to the verdict, let me tell you how I processed the film. I shot 6 rolls with the Hasselblad and 4 rolls with the 35mm cameras. I developed all the film at home in 2 3-reel Patterson tanks with expired Kodak X-Style chemistry. I use either a 1:3 or 1:4 dilution. Here you can see the 120 film negatives hanging to dry, and then I use a Epson V800 scanner, and I use either a 35mm carrier, as you can see here, or 120 film carrier to scan the various film types. I then process the film with Silverfast software, I think it's Silverfast 64, and here you can see the film preview scans on the monitor. This is a monitor screenshot. Okay, and with that, onto the verdict. Which camera is the best? Obviously you have some bias towards Leica cameras, but how do the two cameras compare? The Olympus 35 SP is faster to focusing, very easy to focus. It's sharp, stop down, although I didn't really stop it down very much. It's compact and it's affordable. The Leica M3 gives you the option of interchangeable lenses, which means you can get much sharper photos, such as using the Elcan or any sharper lens like an Apo lens. The film advance is so much nicer to use, the shutter release is nicer, it sounds better, and it's just generally more solid and more fun to use. Let me know in the comments what you think, and I will do a full review on the Elcan very soon.